Hello and welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to a bit of a relaunch of the NCTR Dialogue series. My name is Sandra Bender. I am the Community Engagement and Education Program Coordinator here with the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. And it's my great pleasure to be joined today by Jennifer Wood. Jen is our Intergovernmental and Community Relations Liaison. And she is going to speak with us today about a support fund that we run, or that she runs, called the Na-mi-quai-ni-mak Support Fund. So Jen, tell us about who you are and what your role is at the NCTR. Let's start there.
Okay, welcome and thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Any time to speak to those that want to learn about residential school survivors and especially the healing fund that we offer. So my name is Jennifer Wood. I'm a third generational survivor. My community is in Southern Ontario. 5 of my siblings were taken in a sweep of an afternoon. My mother went to residential school. My grandmother went to residential school. So I'm, I guess, your ultimate product of the system. But I work here at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. I have a couple of hats that I wear. I oversee the Na-mi-quai-ni-mak fund, which is an Ojibwe term. I remember them fund, and also I wear the hat of the Intergovernmental Community Relations here in NCTR. So it's a dual role, and I really, really love working on this file, especially for healing our survivors. And I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot. I know every time I've tried to connect with you, you're off at a conference or you're out of town. So I know how incredibly busy you are.
Mm-hmm.
As we go, feel free to ask questions if you have questions for Jen. I think we're having some troubles with our Facebook stream, but ideally, yeah, we're not sure what's happening, but we'll find out. But if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you can post your questions or comments there, and I'll bring them up for Jen to answer. Meanwhile, tell us about the fund itself. What is it for? Who can apply for it? Tell us everything.
Mm-hmm. It's a nationwide fund. It's ultimately for survivors, for survivor organizations, survivor groups, any survivor across Canada or community that wants to heal and commemorate and honor their survivors however they feel is best. We go from coast to coast to coast. We have well over, I believe, we've approved, don't quote me, over 183 applications across Canada. And of course, we want to reach the challenged northern communities in our country because of the remoteness and because of being, not familiar or close to the cities or the organizations that offer these healing opportunities. So it's the criteria is primarily that when you apply for the fund, it's a $10,000 one-time grant per community for any community that wants to apply to heal their survivors. Like I said, it's gone nationwide. It's gone viral, actually. So it has to be a nonprofit organization as long as you're applying from a numbered company and that it's endorsed and supported and planned by and for survivors. We've gone, straight across the country with this healing fund, and it's done incredibly well. And I've always said wherever I have an opportunity to present that I believe that my goal and mission is to champion this to become a permanent fund, because that's what we're hearing out in community now is permanency. Because I believe that when you're working with survivors and you're talking to survivors and about this application, about the fund, a lot of times what happens is survivors, and it's a sad reality that communities don't feel like they're worthy to apply for this, and And that's just a legacy of the residential school system that has been imposed and impacted all of our lives. So I always believe that we should have healing opportunities at our fingertips. And, I've often voiced this to my own colleagues that, the one-time fund, as much as I appreciate the fund and what it does for survivors, I'd like to see it become a permanent fund that it's completely accessible 100% to survivors at any given time and date. So that's a bit about the application, the criteria, nonprofit organization. It's a $10,000 grant, but at the same time, Sandra, we have a two-stream system here. We also offer another fund for commemoration. It's commemoration symbol, I call it. I don't like to say marker. A commemoration symbol that survivors want to undertake in their community if they want to honor, acknowledge survivors that went to a particular residential school in Canada. And actually, we lobbied with, our contribution agreement holders that it doesn't have to be at the official site of the residential school, because the challenges were this. Say, for instance, that we were offering an application to northern BC, the remotest area. Well, for the commemoration fund, which is $25,000 to honor, acknowledge survivors that went to a particular school, a lot of survivors wouldn't be able to attend that because of the challenge of the travel, the area, the remoteness, the isolation, and the cost. So survivors that want to commemorate, let's say, for instance, let's say there was a residential school in Bertle where there's no longer any structure there. Survivors can actually still apply for the commemoration fund and still hold an event there and have it doesn't even have to be there, as long as it's for that purpose, that the survivors went to that particular school and that they want to commemorate and honor and acknowledge the time they were there. So it's really, really unique, Sandra. We're talking with places like Chesterfield Inlet, where we want to do a commemoration there, because a lot of people went to Chesterfield. A lot of people went to northern BC, to St. Joseph's Mission, to Alberta, Saskatchewan, all across Canada. So we're trying to get it out there as much as we can for the $25,000 opportunity to apply for a commemoration symbol. As well, the other streamline is the $10,000 for the healing fund to heal communities. So examples, I guess I could use, Sandra, is a lot of people for the $10,000 grant, they apply for things such as healing gardens, or they'll go to the site or burial site where, and have a feast, or they'll have a workshop, and they'll come together and make ribbon skirts with the youth. Or there's such a vast variety, diversity across Canada of those that are applying. It's really, really interesting to see. The one that stands out in my mind, and I always mention this wherever I have the ability to speak, is an application came out from outside of Kenora. I'm not sure of the community, but they had an idea that they wanted to purchase orange light bulbs. And the purpose of that, Sandra, was that orange light bulbs, for those that wanted to be placed outside their homes, would represent a place of safety and a place to talk, which I thought was a phenomenal idea because it was so symbolic and so simple and powerful.
So did that project fell under the Healing Fund?
Healing Fund, yes.
Okay. So so the $25,000 funds are for something physical, like a commemorative marker kind of a thing?
Physical and non-physical, yeah.
Okay.
They can, like I said, a lot of the residential schools are torn down, but yet the site is still there. For instance, we're looking, at Bertle, Brandon, and Elkhorn. And we're also looking at northern Manitoba into Norrie House. We're
Mhm.
also looking at Saskatchewan, an organization out there who wants to do a commemorative symbol. The 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 essence of the commemoration symbol is that they come together as survivors who attended a particular school, and they come together to honor and acknowledge that they went, and to have some form of either a plaque. We gave one for Vancouver. They did a cradle board up in Thompson, the Bay Line, where students had to travel by train, and their last point of departure was Thompson. So they have a symbol up there. We're also looking at Cecilia Jeffries. That was one of the major schools in Ontario that, many went there. So they're looking at clearing the site. So, I'm anxious for people to apply. The application is 3 pages long, as long as you
Mm.
have your description, what schools you're commemorating, as long as you have mental health supports, and as
Mm.
long as your budget outlines the budget line item, where the costs are going to, whether it be in
Mm.
preparation, to gather, to discuss, to come together, whether it be to, have costs in there for your food, your hall,
Mhm.
your travel costs, and then of course the biggest item on your $25,000 budget would be the actual commemoration symbol that you want to place there,
Right.
or wherever they want to place.
Um, just a purely pragmatic question. Um, where do the funds come from? Do those come from us at the NCTR? Do we get any government help with that, or?
There's a it's the commemoration is from the Canada Parks. We have a
Oh, nice.
partnership with them, and they've been very good. And as well, we generate funds coming into NCTR from the pins and the Royal Mint and different
Mhm.
things that we're involved in that people want to donate to, would go towards. A lot of times it's identified that it comes to the fund because a lot of people are
Right.
appealing to it because it's helping and healing survivors across Canada. And when you really think about it, I was thinking about it this morning, that a lot of our survivors across Canada, Sandra, and you know this as well, are being triggered because of the discovery of the unmarked graves and the talk about the missing children straight across our
Yeah.
nation. So communities that are close by those discoveries, I'm sure they're being triggered. I'm sure they're probably in a bit of a state. So the fact that
Yeah.
we're offering this fund is very much needed and probably very much appreciated.
Yeah. I can only assume. And when people are being triggered, especially as the news keeps coming out, I'm sure it can be hard to sort of move from that place into a place of turning it around into action for healing. Um,
Hmm.
do you find that communities typically know that we have this fund?
Well, we use a company out of Ottawa. It has the largest database in Canada, and we do increments of four. I call them mass campaigns, where we send out a one-page flyer across Canada to 28,000 organizations through a fax method, and they all get it at once.
Okay.
But from the generation of the applications that we're getting to NCTR,
Hmm.
that tells me that it's reaching the survivors. So we're really going to up our communication strategy, to get it out into communities. I'm in the process to do a video and explain it, and then
Hmm.
send that video into remote communities that have a local TV or television that they could play the video on, and that the entire community can watch it at the same time. And we're also doing the method of the mass fax campaign throughout Canada. And like I said before, it is reaching communities, and it can only continue to have a greater reach. So we're in an era of reconciliation, and we're in a time where We feel comfortable about talking about things and coming out because the truths are coming out,
Yeah.
and you can't put it under the rug anymore. I always say to people, I wore this orange shirt because of our champion, Phyllis Webstad, who many maybe not know. The Orange Shirt Day is a strong symbolism, a strong representation of the injustices that were done to our survivors because of her wearing her orange shirt the first day of school, and the teacher ripped it off of her, and instantly she became, ashamed of that beautiful shirt that her grandma made. So it's coming out in different forms. And, here at the NCTR, there's really great works that are being undertaken here. We're the champions of the holders and stewards of our records and our
Mhm.
education, our research, and statement gathering. So there's a lot of things happening, and I feel very fortunate to be here to speak for survivors and to assist survivors. I always said I'd rather be the one answering the phone as a survivor myself to a survivor, to
Yeah.
have that level of understanding and appreciation of where a survivor is coming from.
When that shared lived experience, right? Um, yeah, that must be so important for communities and survivors that you're speaking with to know that they're talking to someone who really genuinely understands that experience.
Hmm. Yeah, we did a national gathering last August at the RBC Center downtown, and our headliner was Dr. Gabor Mate, who really opened up a lot of
Yeah.
avenues of healing at that time, even for myself and my sister that came from Ontario. And a lot of people appreciated him because he was very simplistic how he described what trauma is, how it impacts you, how it affects you, why you are the way you are. Like even
Yeah.
my own sister, was surprised. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but she said that she thought she was helping her children by not sharing her story. And she realized after the conference that, sharing is healing. And the more that they know, the more that they'll realize, where she came from, and maybe, some of the childhood experiences that they face. But one thing I learned from Dr. Gabor, and I wanted to share this today, was that I didn't know that when a child is taken from a community, from their home,
Mhm.
they shut down emotionally inside. Their emotions are stunted, and it affects their learning.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, what a terrible impact that must have been for survivors who attended school and came out 10 years later or 5 years later and had to go into mainstream society and to get over all that type of obstacles. So it affected self-esteem, it affected self-worth. And at the same time, I can't speak on survivors on how their experience was, but it some survivors feel it was a positive experience, some feel it was a negative experience, and that's a personal decision that I can't speak to how a survivor felt. But I was very intrigued to learn about Dr. Gabor's findings and how he's speaking on it, and the amount of work that we have ahead of us as survivors, um, to look at overcoming some of these walls and barriers that are starting to come down, I hope.
Well, I've been taught before that it takes 7 generations to heal. Um, so, and we're not that far out, right? So many people who survived this experience are still very much with us. So we can't be
Hmm.
that far down the line of generations just yet, hey?
Hmm. Yeah, and that speaks to the significance and importance of the Na-mi-quai-ni-mak Fund, the healing fund that reaches many, many communities across Canada. And what I found with Na-mi-quai-ni-mak Fund is a community, a First Nations community that's close to a little town. In
Mhm.
some occasions, the town comes together with the community to
Oh,
help them with healing. And I felt that was really significant because that would, to me, would spell a form of reconciliation. You know, we always
Mhm.
say that we cannot have reconciliation without truth, and
Mhm.
the truth is coming out. We had the highest of the Vatican, go to Musquechies and openly apologize, and
Yeah.
that no matter how you look at it, survivors that were there, it helped to hear that apology, and then to others, you know, they'll never accept an apology. But I guess that what I liked about that visit was when he was boarding the flight is that he spoke of genocide, and so the truths are coming out, and I hope that young people, especially the youth, that are being involved in Na-mi-quai-ni-mak Fund as well, joining together with closing the gap of the elders in the community, and
Mm.
the elders teaching the the youth about the legacy that they went through, and that again would help resonate with the youth. And I've always said this, is that the thing to me in my mind is that if youth go back to their culture and values and beliefs and go back to their families and ask what their First Nation is, what is their treaty, where did they come from,
Mm.
what was their values in their community, to me that will really help a youth, because it'll give them a
Mm.
sense of identity, connection, and safety, and feel
Mm.
acknowledged. That's what I believe is going to help the youth. I'll be going into northern Manitoba in Thompson to speak to youth March 21st, I believe. So
Ah,
I plan to really come out strong with giving that to the youth and the elders, because it's a joint effort, I guess. But we have a long ways to go, Sandra, and the fact
mm.
that we are administering and offering this fund from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, I believe that we're going to enter into more types of healing programs here, because when you really, really think about it, the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation is the hub for Canada, to the
Mm.
go-to, because of the champions and holders and stewards of the records and the statement gathering and the videos and everything else. So with our new building coming, I'm really feeling proud that we have that opportunity to play a role to educate all Canadians throughout Canada, and to house it at our building, which is just down the river here. The land was blessed, and it's
Mhm.
considered sacred land now. So, I'm looking forward to all educators across Canada to visit when our building is complete, and to be able to walk away from there with either a toolkit or a package or something that will show the history and the true history and our narratives as residential school survivors.
That's my hope too. The sooner
Hmm.
we get that built, the better, right?
Oh, yes, it's going to be a pivotal time, you know, even worldly, because we get calls worldwide for, what are you building? How are you building it? What are you going to have? What are you going to house in there? So, we
Yeah.
have our work cut out for us here.
Well, speaking of building, I was going to ask if you could tell us about maybe one of the healing stream initiatives and one of the symbolic markers.
Hmm. Um, well, I don't know if you have the one with you. It's the Assiniboine residential school. They have a survivors group here in Winnipeg.
I
They
do.
they had the sorry, I got itchy nose.
All good. Yeah. What are Tell us what we're looking at here.
Well, this is at the grounds of the residential school, and the Na-mi-quai-ni-mak Fund provided funds for the fire. Here again, here's my glasses.
Helps to see.
Yeah, we supported this 768 residential schools students went to Assiniboine school, so they had this idea to have this marker right in the middle, and you'll see those little bricks there. It's all
Hmm.
the names of them. So it's a form of a commemoration symbol that honors and acknowledges the memory of the students that attended the school. So with negotiating with Canada Parks, now we looked at upping the amount to $25,000. So for those that apply, we'll be able to get a greater significant symbolism to
Huh.
commemorate survivors. So that's one of the highlights of the fund is this one because a lot of people visit out at Assiniboine and they're I believe that a lot of tourists will attend and look at this symbolism and they'll be able to see physically, the efforts that were made on behalf of the survivors to never forget and to always be remindful of the legacy that they lived through.
Right. So then, is this the first fire that was held in that fire pit? Or that, yeah.
I believe it was. I believe it was. Yeah, and I believe they come together every year. I mean, they have come to the grounds over there to bring survivors together to acknowledge. I don't remember the date, but I do remember that it was a significant gathering for survivors. And I know some of those survivors that attended the Assiniboine Residential School. They're a strong group and they meet regularly and that's the beauty and the significance that survivors still have that sense of family and that closeness with their former classmates that attended that school.
That's beautiful. And then there was another project you were going to tell us about, right?
Yeah.
In Alberta, I believe.
Yeah, the Alberta Recreations and Parks came together with the elders and the youth. They did a significant healing cleansing with the elders in that community. The elders have a way to physically heal the youth that were in attendance and other survivors so that they took the trauma that was inside of them and took it out into an area where they would bury that trauma. So it was like a real symbolism of healing a survivor, like even the fact that you're talking about taking away that trauma that's inside you. We felt that was really significant as a form of healing through the Na-mi-quai-ni-mak fund. I use this one as an example. So because our survivors, Sandra, as you know, they're passing away at too alarming of a rate. We need to capture and to acknowledge their wisdom that they have and to share it with the youth and to hopefully that we could go into other forms so that the community members are capturing their stories through oral history or taping them. My own daughter wants to capture her grandma's teachings because she's almost like she's the holder of all the historical knowledge in Island Lake, Garden Hill, where my husband comes from. So the fact that she wants to do that to me is really symbolic, and I'm hoping we have met with the Island Lake communities, so hopefully they'll be applying as well because many of them went to Portage, Bertle, and Toulon and other places in Manitoba.
Thanks for giving us some examples of how that can work. I'm curious to know what kind of challenges there are in terms of the application process or on your end. I know I spoke with someone last week at the MKO conference who was talking about a commemorative site that their community is working on, but the cost is something like 70,000. So I know that probably that must be one of the challenges that we can't necessarily fund, or the fund can't cover all of the costs of a community project. Or
Yeah.
what else are the challenges in there?
There's challenges with the applications. I mean, I've worked with survivors for over 10 years when I was at the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. And I understood really quickly about the challenges of going into communities and talking with survivors because, number one, you don't want to talk about, you don't want to bring up any memories or
Yeah.
pain. And again, I'll always go back to it because that affected me as well because you don't think that you're worthy of receiving that because of
Yeah.
what happened in residential school. So the new challenges that we're facing today with applications is sometimes there's a language barrier, especially if elders want to apply. So it's time consuming to call and talk and go on Zoom and to
Yeah.
physically go out and talk. I remember when I was at the assembly, I went into a community 3 times to do a presentation where it finally was that the survivors were comfortable to apply. At that time, it was
Yeah.
for the settlement agreement applications that were out. So now with the new lens that we're looking through with unmarked graves and missing children and talking about burial sites and findings and GPRs and so the language itself is a challenge. So
Sure.
that's why I wanted to change it to commemoration symbol or commemorative symbol instead of using a marker. It sounds so I didn't like
Clinical.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to call it a marker. So, geographical areas are another challenge. I mean, as I said
Mm.
before, that, there are more remote communities that want to take on acknowledging St. Joseph's or the northern communities in the Yukon, Chesterfield Inlet,
Yeah.
the challenges there with the mere fact of having a gathering and bringing other people in, it becomes a issue of where they're going to stay. I mean,
Yeah.
something as realistic as that your average Canadian probably doesn't think about, or the language barrier, or the transportation to get there. And then I always look at, we're always talk about human capacity. We just don't
Mm.
have the capacity to have a person, to take up the charge and to see it through.
Yeah.
Talking with organizations up there and government officials. And, just last week at the MKO, I bumped into the Inuit Association wants me to go do a presentation because they heard me
Mm.
speaking about Chesterfield. So there's lots of different challenges, but at the same time, we have a younger generation that is merging up and that are, really coming out strong and knowing exactly what to do and working with the survivors circle. Like Norway House was there. I met
Uh,
with them, and you know, they have a really young, dynamic woman that's taking it on. But I guess I'm going to have to say the capacity, the language barrier, the to get out there and fully explain is a is a challenge in and of itself because of
sure.
the vastness of our country and the
Yeah.
vastness of the residential schools. So I
Yeah.
tried to reach as many survivor organizations as possible so that they
Mm.
could look at joining together as a survivors organization or a survivors group or I don't know, a health program that can assist. So, but it's
Speaking,
worth it.
sorry. Speaking of assistance, if I know it's probably challenging for some folk to even fill out a really long form. I've seen a couple of I think I translated one of the French ones, the application forms. It is long, and it's a very very Western, very settler based way of giving information. Is that ever a barrier for people? And if it is, do we have the capacity as the NCTR to assist people with filling out those applications?
Hmm. Yeah, any given time that anyone has a challenge with applying or filling it out, we're more than welcome to sit down and to go through it with them and then urge them along on if they have a survivors group, make sure it's supported, make sure they're part of the planning, make sure they're endorsing it.
Hmm.
Ask your chief and council or whomever in your community who wants to write a letter of support, stuff like that. So we definitely go out of our way to accommodate any survivors that's applying, and that's why we went back to the criteria, we went back to the application design, so it can only get better.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just distracted because we've got a question that's come in.
Sure.
So Karen has asked, do survivors of all the schools want to create a commemorative site, or are there those who just want to ignore it to avoid the pain? Is it the aim of the NCTR to cover all of the school sites?
Well, not all of the school sites. I mean, you have a budget that we're working with, so we're reaching as many as we can. And there's no timeline, and we're always, making the fund available like year after year.
Mhm.
So I forgot to mention there's no timeline, but of course it's painful, but there are those survivors that want to come together, that want to commemorate, that want to acknowledge their survivors that attended the school. I was just talking last week to someone that says, I know exactly where we want to commemorate, where the original community started off as and where it got divided up. And so,
Mhm.
they want to go to that site, and it's by boat, and, the method of travel is, but that's what they want to do. They want to commemorate it at their original site of their community and their territory. So I thought, it's entirely up to the survivors what they want to do and how they want to proceed. So again, I'll speak on pain because what happens with a lot of survivors, you know, they don't talk to their family about it because they don't want their family to feel any pain.
Yeah.
And again, you don't want to go to that place of, even my own, background when I talk about my family, the five siblings that were taken in a sweep of an afternoon. I mean, that's even to think about that because I got grandchildren, and my sister was, I don't know, I think she was six, just taken, and another reality in the schools that there was the older siblings down to the smaller siblings. So when they
Mhm.
got to the school, the boys and the girls, the age and the younger ones, my sister, my oldest sister could see her younger sister across the fence, and she wasn't able to to take care of her and to help her. So imagine how that made her feel as
Yeah.
being a older sibling of that younger sibling. So things like that. But in answer to the person's question is, you know, of course, there's a lot of pain, but there's also a lot of people that are coming forward and wanting to commemorate where they attended as a form of to never forget and to always remember what they endured and how they got through it. And our fund here is always looking to improve to accommodate as many as we can. But we're only
Mhm.
one fund, so
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
I think that was a very thorough answer. um, and and yeah, of course, the funds are limited, and there are a lot of schools, both recognized under the settlement agreement and not, right?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, covering all of them, that would be a challenge. But
yeah.
I mean, hopefully, as many communities will apply
Mhm.
as know about this, and we can get some help into some of those healing initiatives, right?
Yeah, and we can also look at, there's the commemorative symbol, but there's also little small gatherings we can look at as well, where, maybe elders want to get together and discuss what they want, which is what's happening now. They're not through the office yet, but they're coming to the office. They're looking at different ways that they want to come together as elders. And a lot of elders, as I said, they want to bridge that gap with the youth because there
Mhm.
is a gap. We're all aware of that. And our youth need us. They need us to support them, to make them feel validation. I mean, you
Mm.
know, we're we're at a time where we really have to come together. And I always say this in presentations that I partake in, that we're stronger in numbers,
Mhm.
coming together where it's okay to talk about our pain because what we're doing is we're sharing it, and that might help another person that is
Yeah.
in the room. I dealt with a lady that I met, and she expressed to me that she's never spoken to her kids about it. She has two children, and when I spoke to her, about here and about what we offer here in terms of statement gatherings and the story, she, at the end of the conversation, she was more than willing to come here and to share her story. So I connected her up with Kayla, and the beauty of it is that her daughter is coming with her when she shares her story and is doing her statement. So just by talking about it and getting to the understanding that it's okay to share, and it's okay to leave it in a safe place, where they're not going to be,
Mhm.
you know, tossed around and disrespected, that it's in a safe place for forever keeping, and we're the stewards to keep those here at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation.
But it must be just such an act of, I think defiance is maybe a stronger word than I wanted, but um, when the Indian Act forbade people from speaking in their own languages, just the act of taking back the power to speak in the way that people need to speak, that alone must be an act, a step toward healing.
I mean, we had legislation upon legislation imposed on our lives, and we're still under the Indian Act as of
Yeah,
today. We all
yeah.
talk from the cradle to the grave. I mean, what a term to use on a human, you know, existence of our people. And my father was a World War II veteran, and he fought side by side with his non-native soldiers. And he said, you know, he was being a little sarcastic, I believe, when he was being interviewed one time, and he said, "We didn't go over and we didn't go over and fight with bow and arrows. We fought with rifles alongside our non-native soldiers." And so, when I started off my file, when I was working at the assembly on the settlement agreement and looking at helping with applications, I went home to him to talk to him and let him know what I'm going to be undertaking, and going out to communities and presenting and helping with applications. And then he said, "You know what we were defined as?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Under the Indian Act before 19, don't quote me, I don't know if it's 1951, but the definition for us was we were considered anything other than a person or a persons." So that made me understand to look at the way that I would do the presentations to survivors, so that I understood where the governments of the day were coming from, and the superintendents of the day and the authorities of the day. They were looking through lens of how we were defined. So no wonder that they treated our people the way that they did in the residential schools, is because we were looked at anything other than a person or persons. So it really helped me on a path to really go forward and to do the presentations in such a way that I came from a place of, why and how and the definition, and then ended on a really hopeful note that we've come a long ways. We've made many, many contributions to our country. A lot of people are looking towards Indigenous people, and governments and organizations are looking at having cultural competency in their departments and cultural awareness workshops, and hanging the orange flag outside their buildings on Orange Shirt Day or the Truth
Mm,
and Reconciliation Week. Like, we are going into an area where it's our time to tell our truth and our narrative, so that we're not
mhm.
considered, you know, dispelled on the truth. That so and when you look at it, we're moving in a place of it's getting better. I hope. I see it
I
anyway.
I hope so too. And I think that the work that you're doing with this fund is a big piece in that. So
Hmm.
it's amazing that you're out there doing that. I hope that this talk today helps more communities become aware that this fund is out there to apply for.
Hmm.
Um, and can people reach you here at the NCTR if they have questions?
Absolutely. Myself or my assistant Kayla, and we have to really look at what our communities need, and don't be afraid to apply. We're friendly face on the phone and voice, and we'll
Yeah.
walk you through it. And if you have to come down, if you happen to be in Winnipeg, come by the office.
Hmm.
I'm going to see someone tomorrow from northern Manitoba to talk about it in person to him, because he's considering the $25,000 commemorative symbol for their community. And we're more than willing to
Great.
go to them, because it's not that easy getting around Winnipeg, and that
Yeah.
I'll always say that we have to invest in our community capacity, in what we have in our communities, and survivors are coming together, and they're joining together, and they're coming together to apply. So that makes me feel good, and I look forward to you know advocating and trying to champion to look at ways and means we can make this a permanent fund for all survivors in Canada and intergenerational survivors.
That would be fantastic indeed.
Yeah, we have, yeah, 60 scoop, you name it. We're, no matter what you look at, 60 scoop intergenerational survivors, um, MMIW, no matter if you peel the onion, the effects are all caused by the impacts of residential school, the homelessness issue. You
Yeah.
know, we're, at least people are thinking differently, and they look through different lens. And now they're trying to look at how they could better their departments or their office or their organization, or how they can do better, or what can they do. That's what our biggest question is when I do a presentation, is what can we do? What do you want us to do? Talk to your
Hmm.
member of parliaments, talk to your
Hmm.
members of the legislative assembly, talk to your government heads, talk to your supervisor. How can
Hmm.
we, look at bettering our offices if our clientele is the percentages survivors or indigenous peoples or Métis or Inuit?
Absolutely. There's That's such an important takeaway that there's always something that we can do, right?
Yes.
We have that choice to speak up. And I think for people who look like me, that's an active call. Speak up, stand with uh, all Canadians to see all people in these lands, first and foremost as people. I think if we start there, that'll be a good start, right?
Yeah, I always share that this is the country we were born in. This is our home. We have nowhere else to go. And for those that are religious out there,
Mm.
no one has authority of you in your own home. So we have a lot of things to educate people on, that we are significant to this country, and we make many contributions. And the more that we put that out there for the youth to know, I really believe that's going to be a way for our youth to stand in their power, stand in their pride, stand in their self-worth, and start taking charge and going out and becoming a person to help contribute back to society, and be proud of yourself as an Indigenous survivor, and First Nations in our country, and Inuit and Métis. Like, we're only better together. We're stronger together, and there's strength in numbers. And I keep saying that to everyone. And I have maybe I'll have a chance to read how I close off my presentations if I can find it in time. But I had one morning when I woke up, I pray a lot, and I believe in prayer, and I'm sure a lot of people do. So I knew I was going to put these on.
They're beautiful glasses.
I woke up one morning, and this came to me. It was like an epiphany. So I wrote it down as fast as I could remember it before I lost it. So when I do presentations, when I go out, because it's primarily survivors in the crowd, and this is what came to me. Everyone knows their own pain. We must be mindful that we all walk in different paths. Trauma was a big part of most of our people's lives. We became desensitized at what we thought was normal. We all witnessed things we shouldn't have as children due to the effects of residential school. We all never heard the words "I love you" or embraced a warm hug. But somehow we all grew up to becoming loving, giving parents. We were not broken, but made stronger, determined to make a good life for our children. We have a lot to be proud of. Give yourselves a pat on the back for getting through everything you did and can still smile and love back. Turn your pain into power. How about that?
That was beautiful, Jen. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that and for sharing your wisdom, your own experience, straight up information about this fund and how it works, and your time. I'm very aware of how precious and short a resource that is for someone in your position. So thank you so much for coming today. I'll just say just a little plug for our next dialogue. We'll be alternating in this series between featuring the work of our own staff here at the NCTR. So I couldn't think of someone better than Jennifer to lead us off in talking about this fund. Our next one will be held on March 22nd. So these will be 3 external speakers. These speakers will be speaking on the topic of sacred women. March is the month of International Women's Day. So our 3 speakers are Dr. Karine Duhamel, who's one of the people who worked on the national inquiry into MMWIG and the final report. Kimberly Levasseur-Puhach, who is a vice president at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. She also formerly served on the mayor of the city of Winnipeg's Indigenous Advisory Circle, and an elder named Amanda Wallen. So please join us for that. And if anyone has any need of support, there are some resources scrolling across the bottom of our screens here. So if any of this information has been triggering or upsetting, please reach out, help us out there should you need it. And again, if you have any questions about the fund, feel free to contact us. There are all sorts of methods for getting in touch with the NCTR on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, on our website. There are contact options there. So do give us a call. So thank you again, Jennifer. This has been amazing. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.